Welcome. I'm Debra Ann Clement, and thank you for joining me for today's episode of Shortcut to the Soul. Today I'm talking about aspects from a lunar or a solar eclipse to a planet in your chart. Now, eclipses, right, they're very powerful, and when they connect with a planet, especially in a hard aspect, a conjunction, a square, an opposition, much more likely to coincide with an external event, and in some cases, much more, if it's a hard energy, can even blindside you. Now, I'm going to be speaking, some things I'll be speaking specifically, some things I'm going to speak a little bit more generally or in themes, and the reason for that is because whether it's a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, the operative word is change. Yes, solar eclipse is about a new beginning, and a lunar eclipse we speak to an ending. But solar eclipses can bring an ending if there's something in the way and it needs to clear it out. And, beginning is an interesting word. We like to think, the beginning of love, right? The beginning of happiness. Well, there can be the beginning of a health issue. So that's the reason why. So I want you to think about it in terms of change. And we're going to start with the sun. So the sun represents men, and that's where I'm going to start. An eclipse to the sun, particularly a conjunction, can take a man out of your life. Doesn't mean he's going to die, or it can bring a man into your life. It can bring romance into your life. But the sun also represents the physical heart. So if there's any history of a heart issue or blood pressure or circulation, and the sun is getting a conjunction, but an opposition or a square, I'm going to say pay attention to the health. And that's even up to a month before, or a month after easily, could be even later. If at any time start feeling up just a little bit off, check it out. And if there's no history at all, you're healthy, you're great. There's no history with heart or blood pressure. But your sun is, again, on the receiving end of a conjunction, square, or opposition. And, a month before, during the time, or after, you start feeling a little funny in the chest. Oh, maybe it's a little tight. Well, it's anxiety. Okay, you've been stressed. Or maybe it's indigestion from something that you ate. And, maybe that's TMJ, that's ache you're suddenly getting in your jaw. I'm going to say to you to go and check it out. And, this isn't meant to sound like, oh my God, I want you to be terrified and be a fearmonger. But let me tell you, things like this can save lives. And I will tell you, I'm going back, God, it's close to almost 20 years now. I had company. It was one of my aunts was over, and I was looking at her chart, and there was a heavy influence coming from an eclipse, and it was hitting the sun. And I remember asking her, basically saying the same thing, what's your heart? And she was kind of like this way and that way, and said, well, every now and then, sometimes she'd get a little bit of anxiety. And so a few weeks later, around the time of the eclipse, it was a little bit stronger, this anxiety. So she actually did make an appointment with a doctor, and they gave her a stress test. And as it happened, they had to stop the stress test because she would have had a heart attack, and she ended up having open heart surgery. And yes, she lived for many, many years. Now, maybe that would have all happened anyway. Maybe she, but then again, maybe, she thanked me for it. So I assume she may have just, put it off a little bit longer. So there's something to this. Also, if it is a quincunx, that's a minor aspect, about 150 degrees, but if an eclipse is making a quincunx to the heart, that can coincide with, again, a heart-related issue, circulation, blood pressure. Check it out. Creatively speaking, let's talk about something a little bit happier. Well, an eclipse to the sun, especially if it's a trine or if it's a sextile, it can be very good for romance, and it can certainly be very creative. It can be very inspiring. Your creative talents may expand, or maybe you'll finish a creative project, depending if it's something that's coming to a conclusion here. The moon. So the moon represents women. So again, a conjunction to the moon can bring a woman in, can take a woman out. Again, it doesn't mean they're going to die. Maybe they move away, okay? But it also, again, it's family, it's mom, it's the home. So an eclipse to the moon can speak to changes in your family, and particularly perhaps in the life of your mom, right? Doesn't mean it's going to be a crisis here, by the way. Now, a change in the home, it may have something to do with a move. An eclipse comes, you may decide it's time to move. If you're trying to sell, maybe it'll bring it, to a conclusion. But the moon does represent, your family and, of course, and real estate. So Other ways, well, it might be a change in the home, like you're redecorating, or you decide to maybe to renovate. You know, it's not always that we're going to move. Maybe you're going to do some major improvement in the home. If it's an easy aspect, like a trine or a sextile, it's a good time. Your intuition may increase, and also, you know, family life tends to be very content. And if women come into your life during that time, they can be like some new friends. Now, the other thing, though, I do want to say about, I'm going to mention health. What if it's a quincunx to the moon? Well, you want to watch health issues related to the parts of the body that the moon rules. So you'd look at the lungs, because it rules part of the lungs. You'd look at the womb, the digestive issues, you know, for example. And again, if there's anything going on with that, you know, just check it out. Mercury, let's see. So if there's an eclipse to Mercury, Mercury represents our intellect, our mind, but also siblings, neighbors, your local area. And I always say transportation, but it's the way we think. It's the way we communicate. Now, if there's a conjunction to your natal Mercury, you could either begin or end, quite frankly. It might be a course of study. You might begin or end, again, you may be writing something. You start a book or you finish a book or some type, you know, of writing. Let's see what else. I'm just thinking about what else you could begin or end connected to Mercury. Well, on another note, let me just go somewhere else. Mercury is about the local area. So there can be a change in your local area. Okay? Neighbors, again, may bring in a new neighbor. Neighbors may move. And if it's a neighbor from hell, then, you know, that's great. That's wonderful. You can celebrate. It's also about short trips. And so it can coincide with a trip. Again, you may decide to take one because if it is some type of a beginning. But Mercury is about siblings. And so if there is a connection or an aspect, I should say, to Mercury, if it's an easy one, if it's a sextile, it's a trine, you know, you might have some happy news connected to a sibling. If there is a square or an opposition, there can be a tense situation connected to a sibling, or there can be a situation going on, of course, in the sibling's life. And transportation, I am going to mention, you know, vehicles, cars, motorcycles, even bicycles for that matter. And if there's a hard aspect to Mercury, it might be the time that you might be getting a new one. And that may not be a bad thing. It doesn't mean that, oh my God, you know, my car died, I have to get another one. It just may be the eclipse, everything, like I say, it comes together at the same time and is creating, you know, it coincides with this event where you're able to go out and maybe even get the car of your dreams. Again, it's going to depend on it's hitting Mercury and what else is it doing in your chart. Because again, it can be, let's say it's conjuncting Mercury, so I'm going to say, oh, you may start or end a course. Yeah. Well, if Mercury is in your 9th house, it may not have anything, well, that would actually be education, but let's say it could be a law, something to do with law. You could be beginning or ending something connected to law. So you have to take it in, you know, like I say, looking at it at the whole. But let's say there's a quincunx. Let's say there's a quincunx from the eclipse to your Mercury. So in terms of issues, Mercury rules the nervous system, so it can create stress. It can just be a more stressful time. You can feel a little bit more tense, a little bit more restless. Mercury rules the eyes. So again, if you know your eyes are bothering, you're not seeing clearly, you're seeing some spots, by all means, go check it out. Mercury is also connected to hearing, so I want to mention that. Also, our sense of smell, so any issues with that. Now, Mercury rules shoulders down to fingertips. So again, anything to do with the hands, the arms, and the fingers, of course. And Mercury, Mercury rules part of the lungs, okay, as well. So anything to do with breath and with breathing, any type of issues that come up at that time, take care of it. Check it out. So let's talk about Venus next. Venus. So Venus represents its love, its money, right? Its beauty, it's the arts. And so if it is a conjunction to Venus, really, quite frankly, an artistic talent could blossom. There could be new love. There could be new money. Or I could say, it's depending if it's a lunar eclipse, you know, love may blossom. Okay. And money, well, it could be that money actually comes to you. You get the check that you've been waiting for. Or again, you could be making a decision about money. There could be a change in money. It could be a change connected to your income, depending upon your chart. Now, if it's an easy aspect, it's a trine, it's a sextile, you may make a change. You may have a makeover, quite frankly. You may discover some new interest in the arts or a new appreciation for the arts. And you might also just simply have some more opportunities, quite frankly, to indulge yourself in whatever it is that you find pleasurable. Now, again, I want to go back to the hard aspects. If it's a square or an opposition, budget might be an issue. So the money, you might have to establish a budget, or you may be having to deal with the consequences if you were overindulging, in the past. Relationships, again, could be a little bit rocky, and if they're not meant to last, whether it's a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, it can coincide with an ending, with a parting of ways, and would likely be final. Now, what about if it's a quincunx? So if it is a quincunx, and we're talking about Venus, anything to do, there's association with the ovaries, but also Venus is connected to the kidneys. So anything with kidneys, and I'm going to throw in the urinary tract there, okay, as well, though we have co-rulerships, different planets, but I'm just going to say to you, for Venus, anything to do with the kidneys, urinary tract, and ovaries, just pay attention to that part of the body, and also, of course, the throat. So any throat issues at that time, anything to do, I'm going to say, with the esophagus, it could even be like an acid reflux. But if it gets stirred up around that time, just check it out. Let's see, Mars. So now Mars also represents men, but that's our drive. It's our physical energy. It's also, our sexual energy. So it's interesting, with a conjunction to Mars, you may feel very invigorated, because your energy can get a tremendous boost. And quite frankly, if you've been under the weather, that energy can actually help be very good for a quick recovery. Now, if it's a hard aspect, it's an opposition, it's a square. Mars is about anger, right? So it can really be very inflammatory energy, where you can become engaged in conflict. So just really come on too strong. So again, it's going to depend where Mars is in your chart. If Mars is in the 7th house, you may come on too strong in relationships, or you may just be very adversarial. And the other part of it I do want to say is that you do want to watch out for particularly the square, the opposition, and I'll throw the quincunx in here too, for accidents, okay? Because Mars rules inflammation. And there's an inflammatory energy at times related to these eclipses. So again, when they connect in a way, especially connected on a hard energy, or as well as the quincunx, it can be an accident, but it can also be some type of a health-related issue that's going to be connected to inflammation, and that can be a fever. It can even be a rash, quite frankly. All right, a rash, a fever. And Mars rules the head, so anything connected to the head injuries, and even if it is, the eyes, and we say, oh, well, that's Mercury. If it's anything bothering you in the head, take a peek, look into it. Really, it's just better to be safe than sorry, because it doesn't mean that there's some horrible thing going on, but there can be something brewing, and you check it out. You know what? You nip it in the bud. And Jupiter. So an eclipse hitting Jupiter. Now, Jupiter, right, it's good fortune. It's also excess. So Jupiter is the principle of expansion, and it's abundance, and it's success, and it's all these great things. Now, if it is a conjunction, either way, solar, like I say, or lunar, you might actually get what it is, something that you've really been wanting, something that you've been hoping for. There's this oh God, we say, if an eclipse hits Jupiter, like, be careful what you wish for, especially they say if it's a solar eclipse, because you'll get what you want. But the truth of the matter is, when we're talking about Jupiter, it can be some type of an opportunity, especially if it's an easy aspect like a trine or a sextile, to take a great trip, all right, to take a big trip, or also maybe to continue your education. Jupiter is connected to spirituality. But Jupiter is also about publishing, and it's about the media. So having an eclipse, having your Jupiter eclipse, can put you in the spotlight. It can put you in the newspaper, so to speak, but it could. It rules Jupiter, Sagittarius, right, rules journalism. So an eclipse to your Jupiter can actually be very, very fortunate if you need to promote yourself, if you need to get some attention. And it can also coincide with some type of a new, some spiritual progress. Now, what about, though, the opposition? What about the square? And of course the quincunx. The opposition and the square, you have to watch out for excess, and that's when the time with an eclipse you can overspend, you can overeat, or you can overplay your hand, quite frankly. Your expectations about something may be disappointed, or you may let somebody down, all right, people, but more than likely someone that you're relying on may let you down. If it is a quincunx, okay, a quincunx to Jupiter. So Jupiter rules, well, it's connected with the liver, also the pituitary glands, the pituitary gland, things that are, because it connects growth hormones. And Jupiter also, I just want to mention something else about Jupiter and health. So Jupiter also rules things, again, that grow. So things like tumors, which the moon does as well. I didn't think to mention that, but the moon also rules growths and tumors. So Jupiter, if something suddenly pops up, it looks funny, you've got something, it's a simple mole, but suddenly it's changing or it's getting bigger. Hey, go check it out. And then we have Saturn. So Saturn represents business, ambition, status, career. We say, right, limitations. So if an eclipse is making a conjunction to Saturn, you might begin or end a career. All right, or there may be a change in your status, which can be personal or which can be professional. There might be some type of an opportunity to advance in a field. Then again, a door may close. It depends, again, right, on the aspect and the rest of the chart. Though if it is an easy aspect, if it turns out to be a trine or a sextile, you might actually get recognition at this time for accomplishment. And by recognition, I mean, serious recognition. You might get a promotion. You might get, an award or an honor. And if you've been experiencing uncertainty, let's say in career, the eclipse sometimes can actually bring some stability. Now, if it's the hard aspect, and if it's an opposition, if it's a square, then it's a little bit different, and you may actually find yourself a little bit more burdened in some way. There may be some more obligations that come your way, or particularly, I'm going to say, with the opposition and the square, you may feel a bit unappreciated. You could feel a little bit, I'm going to say, isolated. Now, if there's a quincunx to Saturn in your chart, in terms of, I'm going to say, potential health, you want to watch what Saturn rules. The teeth, the bones, the joints, okay, in particular the knees, and also your skin. So things of nature, again, like rashes. Now, Uranus. So Uranus, I don't know if you hear that. That's Valentino, my dog, snoring in the background, but in case you hear that. So he's taking a nap. He's not interested in this. So anyway, Uranus represents the unexpected, right? But it's a planet of freedom. It's a planet of social reform. It's a planet of brilliance and genius. And so if it is a conjunction, if you have a conjunction to your natal Uranus, you may actually be set free. You may be liberated from some type of limiting circumstance. And it's your sort of get out of your jail card. Will it be for free? Well, it kind of depends on the aspect. Honestly, is it the conjunction or is it a square or an opposition? Because that can also do it. Uranus is a planet of separation. But if it is conjuncting the sun, odds are you feel more courageous, much more willing to take risks. The easy aspects, the trine, the sextile, it's a lot easier to make changes in your life and get yourself some more freedom, all right? If there's something that's holding you back, it's not like you have to blow it out of the water. It's just easier it's just easier to break free. And you don't care as much what people think, and it just doesn't bother you, quite frankly. It's just not held back by it at that time. The only thing I do want to say, though, about the square and the opposition is that can absolutely be a change. If you're going to be blindsided, this can be a blindside, all right? And also, you may be so eager to implement a change or you get an idea. With the eclipse, you may act too quickly, okay? And then you realize too late that it's like, oh, maybe I should have waited here. In terms of if it's a quincunx, then should it be a health issue? Uranus rules like the shins, the shins and the ankles, and it too is associated, I want to say, with the nervous system. Mercury rules the brain. I'm just going to throw that out there because I actually forgot about that. But Uranus also is associated with the brain, and that's what reminded me. So just want to mention that. But any type of Mercury and Uranus, any type of a nerve-related issue, and that could be something like Parkinson's, or I know isn't that pleasant to talk about, but or just anything to do with tension, stress, anxiety can be very much connected if there's a quincunx to those planets. And it may just be energy, it's anxiety that comes and that goes. Now, Neptune. What about the eclipse connecting with Neptune in your chart? So Neptune represents vision, right? Inspiration, and it certainly is connected to spiritual gifts like clairvoyance. And if it's a conjunction, you may very well feel inspired. You can also feel drained. All right, it can kind of go one way or the other. You may see things, oh my God, with perfect clarity, or you may be completely drowning in confusion. Again, kind of goes one way or the other. But you can. One thing is for certain, you can intuitive abilities, psychic abilities can absolutely be energized. And so, especially if it's an easy aspect, it can really develop easily. You'll be very much more in tune with your intuition. Artistic talents as well, can blossom, be heightened during this time, and it might be, writing, it could be music. Now, if it is a hard aspect, the square or the opposition from an eclipse, again, you could encounter some form of deception, all right, connected in some area of your life. Could be, Neptune is also a bit of a fear monger at times because, it's imagination. And so you could make mountains out of molehills. Then again, we can also, get lost in some fantasy and delude ourselves. But if it's a hard energy, like I say, you do want to just be aware of, I'm just going to say that discouragement doesn't, go into overdrive if there is some type of a disappointment, because a hard aspect in opposition to a square can coincide with some type of a disappointment if it's hitting Neptune. If there is a quincunx, okay, to Neptune. So Neptune rules the feet. So you do want to be aware if there's any issues connected with the feet. And this is from experience. It's not something that I really see listed anywhere, but I am going to say to you, I find that health-related issues very often that are connected to hormones. Venus is one of them. I forgot that one. I just didn't remember them all. But Neptune as well, because when you have a quincunx to Neptune, a lot of times it's something subtle. Because Neptune and health, a lot of times you don't figure out what it is, or there's a million tests and it's like they all keep coming up negative, or they all keep coming up I can't think of the word, but it's inconclusive, right? It's inconclusive. And so just to keep that in mind. Now, Neptune is an ego-denying planet. And so again, the hard energies to it, that's why you can feel, sometimes you don't feel so great about yourself, and that's discouragement. But again, with the imagination, you just don't want to make mountains out of molehills and project all of your fears. And let's see, then we have Pluto. So Pluto represents, right, its power, right, with control issues, its transformation. Now, if an eclipse makes a conjunction to your natal Pluto, there's a good chance you're going to experience a major change in life. And it may just be, and wonderful, you maybe have the opportunity to reinvent yourself on some level. And again, depending where it falls, it might be reinventing, your business, or reinventing a creative project, or reinventing your love life, because, right? But whatever it is, it's about a reinvention or a transformation. Now, if it is, let me talk about control issues. Yeah, so an eclipse, by the way, hitting Pluto, can it coincide with power struggles or control issues? Yes, it's much more likely to happen, though, if it's an opposition or a square. Then you're more likely to be involved with power struggles with others, and they may be very manipulative. Extreme cases could be, a bit of a crisis. But it's also, if it's an easy aspect, if it's a trine, if it's a sextile, you can make tremendous progress, and it's much easier to heal, okay, to heal both physically and psychologically. So I just want to mention that. And as far as anything to do, I'm just going to say with those power struggles, because it's an eclipse, and whether it's a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, let's be honest, right? It's the moon's the emotions, the sun speaks to the conscious will and the ego. So a lot of times it is a battle of wills, but it's a battle of egos. And If Pluto's being hit, I'm going to say if you're involved in a power struggle, very often there is a chance that the person that you're in the contest with, so to speak, they can have a lot more resources than you, or they probably won't hesitate to play dirty. Now, in terms of, just thinking of legal matters for a moment, that just made me think of legal matters. So I do want to say if either Venus or Jupiter is being hit by the eclipse in your chart, and you are involved in a legal matter, a lawsuit or you're waiting for some type of a legal matter to be settled. So the conjunction could connect to either the beginning or the end, right, of a legal matter. If it's the trine or the sextile, odds are may come out very well for you and you'll be smiling. The square or the opposition speaks to a challenge. And again, it's going to depend a lot on what's going on in your chart. It can bring it to a conclusion. And the square, the opposition, could it be some type of settlement and you won't be that happy? We're never happy with settlements. I mean, what does the word settlement mean? It means, you know what settlement really is? I mean, let's be honest. It means I'm giving more than I want and I'm not getting as much as I feel I deserve. That's what settlement is. And on the other hand, though, again, I always say squares are provocative energy. So if you've been working hard, it's been going on, it might be actually when you make the big, you finally win. You finally get the decision that you had been waiting for. Now, again, by all means, this is not all inclusive. And I always say, yes, it depends on the house it's in. If the planet is in your chart, it also depends on what about the houses that the planets rule. So what I'm saying is that if there is, for example, let's say there is a conjunction to your Mercury. I'm just going to go with Mercury here. And your Mercury happens to be in the third house. Well, that is connected to cars and it is connected to writing. So you may be much more likely, right, to be involved in there or have something with a sibling. But let's say your Mercury is in the sixth house. Well, there's, communications, but maybe you'll be signing a contract for a job. Maybe that beginning or that ending, that communications is an agreement, you're getting a dog. Because in Mercury is agreements and it's not always written contracts. Okay, but it can be something, as simple as that. So you do have to bring in, or I'm going to say blend in the energy of the house. And again, a quincunx to Mercury, if it's in the sixth house, there's more of an issue connected to health. And it could be something dietary. That's something else too. It can just be something that's very dietary. Quincunx to Neptune also can be allergies. And I'm doing this one off the top of my head, so I didn't have no notes, so it's what I remember. But truthfully, and you can go online, and you can look up the different signs and the different planets and see medical astrology, what other parts of the body, that each planet rules. But take into consideration, again, the planet, the house that it's in, so the life areas, okay? And again, and just one more example. So Mercury, let's say it's in your fourth house, the home, the family, and it's, there it is. It's conjuncting, and I'm going to use a conjunction with a square hard energy, and there's a change in the home. Well, maybe with a sibling, maybe your sibling's moving out, or, horrors, maybe your sibling is moving back in. So, or a neighbors are moving, next door, moving in or moving out. So it really, that's why when it comes to predictive astrology, and so many people say to me, oh my God, it's so overwhelming, it seems like it's so much work. And it's something that comes with practice, and there is that synthesis and there is that intuitive element to it as well. But this is the nutshell version, quite frankly, of eclipses to the planets. So even if not in specific events, do think of it in terms of themes, in terms of what these planets, the areas, the relationships, the things that they rule. All right, so thank you very much again for joining me. And until next time, this is Debra Ann Clement, and may Jupiter's blessings be your constant companion.
We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. To schedule a consultation, please visit DebraClementAstrologer.com.